The clang of metal echoed in the cavernous lab as Maya knelt on the cold floor, scrubbing stubborn grease from the experimental drone. Around her, a group of engineers exchanged snickers and whispered jokes. "Maybe she's cleaning up her mistakes," one muttered, loud enough for the others to hear. At the center stood Alex Klein, the lead engineer, his arms crossed and a smirk curling at the corner of his lips. "Why don't you leave this to the real experts?" he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You're wasting your time and our resources." Maya didn't respond. She kept her head low, fingers steady in their rhythm. Her silence was a shield. Behind those quiet eyes lay a mind sharper than any of theirs, a mind that had been overlooked and underestimated for far too long. The others saw only a girl who didn't belong in this world of complex algorithms and cutting-edge tech. What they didn't see was the secret she carried. The solution that had eluded them through 10 years of research and $50 million of funding. They laughed, they mocked, they didn't believe. But what they didn't know was, she had the answer they spent 10 years and $50 million looking for. Riley's earliest memories were soaked in the scent of motor oil and the steady clink of wrenches turning in her dad's garage. It was a cramped, cluttered sanctuary filled with parts salvaged from broken machines and half-finished projects. Her father, a wiry man with grease-streaked hands and bright, clever eyes, was a self-taught mechanical genius. He didn't read manuals or follow instructions. He listened to machines, understood their language in a way no textbook could teach. From the moment Riley could stand, she was there, watching. She wasn't taught by lessons or lectures, but by quiet observation and endless questions. She learned to spot a loose bolt, to hear the subtle hum of a failing motor, to sketch blueprints on the back of scrap paper. Her father's world was a masterclass in ingenuity, improvisation, and stubborn determination. When she was 12, everything changed. One cold autumn evening, her father didn't come home from the garage. The next day, Riley found him slumped over his workbench. His heart had given out quietly, like one of the machines he loved to fix. The loss ripped through her, but it didn't break her. Instead, it forged a promise to carry on his legacy, to build and create even when the world told her she couldn't. But without money, without formal education, she knew she had to start somewhere. That's how she found herself pushing a mop in the very lab where she now scrubbed floors, where the brightest minds dismissed her as nothing more than a janitor. Every sweep of the mop was a tribute, every stain cleaned a quiet vow. Riley wasn't just cleaning the floors, she was sweeping away the doubts, the prejudices, the barriers that stood between her and the future she was determined to build. Her father's lessons echoed in her mind, a steady rhythm beneath the mocking laughter. She was more than a janitor. She was a daughter of ingenuity, armed with the kind of knowledge that couldn't be found in books, but that might just change everything. Dynex Engineering was a fortress of brilliance, or at least that's how the engineers like to see it. Inside gleaming glass walls and sleek metal corridors, arrogance flowed like electricity. The company bred an elite club of geniuses who spoke in jargon, dismissed outsiders, and guarded their secrets like treasure. It wasn't just a workplace, it was a kingdom where only the right minds belonged. For Riley, that kingdom was a cage. To most of the staff, she was invisible, a ghost moving quietly through the halls, her presence barely registering beyond the occasional dismissive glance. When she swept past clusters of engineers deep in heated discussions, their laughter would cut sharp, sometimes at her expense. "Hey, mop girl, maybe the floors are smarter than you," someone sneered one morning, barely stifling a chuckle. The words hung in the air, and no one bothered to defend her. Her uniform was a marker of her place. A janitor among titans, she emptied trash bins while others designed the future. She cleaned coffee spills while others debated quantum algorithms. Every small task was a reminder of where she belonged, or where they wanted her to believe she belonged. Yet what stung the most weren't just the words or the sneers, it was the silence, the deliberate ignoring, The conversations that stopped when she approached, the way they erased her from the equation as if she were a mistake they could sweep away. But beneath that quiet suffering a fire burned. Every insult, every slight only hardened her resolve. She wasn't just cleaning their messes, she was quietly piecing together something they couldn't see coming. And in a place where respect was reserved for the loudest voices, Riley's silence spoke volumes. Because sometimes, the most dangerous weapon in an elitist kingdom is the one they refuse to notice at all. Unit 17 sat in the corner of Dynex's lab like a forgotten relic, its cold metal frame coated in a thin layer of dust and disdain. It was the company's greatest failure, a legendary dead engine that no one could bring back to life. For 10 years, countless top engineers had tried and failed, throwing millions of dollars and their reputations at it, only to watch their efforts fizzle out in frustration. At Dynex, 17 was more than just a broken machine. It was a ghost story whispered behind closed doors, a punchline shared in hushed tones. You know the engine? The one that's never going to run? Yo, that's a 17, they'd say with a smirk. It was a symbol of limits, the one challenge even the company's brightest minds couldn't conquer. The engine's stubborn silence mocked them, its internal gears and circuits frozen in a state of unyielding refusal. Engineers would gather around for a brief moment of curiosity, then turn away with a shake of their heads, unwilling to waste precious time on something deemed impossible. But not Riley. While others dismissed a 17 as a joke or a dead end, Riley felt a strange pull. When her cleaning rounds brought her near, she'd pause, her fingers brushing gently against the cold surface. In its stillness, she sensed a challenge, a puzzle, waiting patiently for someone who saw beyond the failure. She didn't have the tools or the fancy education, but she had something else. The quiet confidence of a daughter who had learned to listen to machines when everyone else turned away. To Riley, a 17 wasn't just broken, it was waiting for her. And maybe, just maybe, she was the one who could fix it. After hours, when the lab emptied and the hum of machines softened to a distant whisper, Riley's true work began. The others left their theories and tools behind, but she stayed, drawn back to Unit 17 like a moth to a hidden flame. She wiped its surface carefully, tracing the worn edges and faded labels, letting her fingers memorize every groove and dent. She watched how the engine's parts fit, or didn't. She listened for the faintest creak or pulse beneath the silence. Patterns began to emerge in her mind, subtle clues that no one else seemed to notice. Every night she took mental notes, piecing together a puzzle that had baffled the best minds at Dynex. One evening, as she cleaned around the engine's base, a small metal box caught her eye. It was covered in dust, wedged behind a panel she'd never bothered to check before. Inside were yellowed notebooks. Her father's handwriting sprawled across the pages, sketches and scrolls detailing his observations from years ago. Her breath caught. The notes matched some of the engine's strange symptoms, details the engineers had overlooked or dismissed as irrelevant. Her father's intuition had seen what others missed, clues hidden in the engine's hum, in the way its parts aligned and moved. The realization hit her. The experts weren't just stumped. They were looking in the wrong places. Their complex models and expensive tools had blinded them to the engine's simplest secrets. But Riley, armed with her father's legacy and her own quiet determination, saw a different path. She wasn't just cleaning floors or polishing metal. She was uncovering the truth hidden beneath years of failure. And with every late night, every careful observation, she edged closer to a breakthrough no one expected. One afternoon, as Riley quietly mopped near Unit A-17, she couldn't help but mutter under her breath, "If you looked here instead of there, maybe it would run." Her voice barely carried, but it was enough. The cluster of engineers nearby stopped mid-conversation and turned, eyes narrowing with disbelief and amusement. Alex Klein, the lead engineer, laughed loudest. "Did you just try to fix a 10-year failure with a mop and a cleaning rag?" he sneered. "What's next? You'll tell us how to build the next-gen prototype." The room erupted in laughter. The others joined in, mocking her with cruel jokes. "Hey, mob girl, you want to fix a 17? Prove it," someone shouted. Alex's smirk deepened. "All right, here's a bet. You get 1 month. Fix that engine or you're out of this floor for good. No more wandering around pretending you belong here." The laughter grew louder, but Riley's eyes stayed steady. No one expected her to accept, but she did, calmly and without hesitation. "Deal," she said softly. A hush fell over the room. The bet wasn't just about an engine, it was about status, pride, and a challenge that carried far more weight than anyone dared admit. Riley didn't boast. She didn't need to. Inside, she was quietly confident, fueled by years of watching, listening, and learning. The bet was theirs to laugh at, but soon it would be theirs to regret. Because sometimes the quietest voices carry the loudest truths. Word of the bet spread faster than Riley expected. By the next morning, whispers had reached the far corners of Dinix Engineering, and with them came Dr. Marina Holt. Marina was a legend in the industry, a senior engineer whose breakthroughs had shaped the future of robotics. Her sharp mind and uncompromising standards commanded respect and fear. When she stepped into the lab that day, the air shifted instantly. Conversations hushed, heads turned. No one had invited her, yet here she was, drawn by the news of a janitor daring to take on Unit A-17. The tension was palpable. Engineers straightened their posture, eyes flicking nervously toward Riley, as if daring her to fail under the watchful gaze of a titan. The usual mocking smirks were replaced by strained silence. Everyone expected a spectacular collapse. Riley felt the weight of 100 skeptical eyes, but met Marina's steady gaze without flinching. The presence of someone so revered didn't intimidate her. It sharpened her focus. Marina didn't say a word at first. She simply observed, moving silently between the scattered tools and broken parts. Her expression unreadable, she watched Riley approach the engine, her every move quiet but deliberate. For the first time, the lab wasn't just a place of sneers and doubts, it had become an arena, a stage for something far bigger than any of them imagined. And as Riley prepared to dive into the impossible, the presence of Dr. Marina Holt was a reminder that this wasn't just a bet anymore. It was a challenge to everything Dinix thought they knew. Riley knelt beside Unit A-17, eyes scanning its surface as if reading a familiar story written in metal and wires. The lab fell silent, all eyes locked on her, waiting for the inevitable failure. But Riley's mind was already working, calm and methodical. First, she checked the altitude calibration. The engine's sensors were designed to adjust based on precise environmental data, but something was off. Using a small handheld device she'd cobbled together from spare parts, she ran a quick diagnostic. "The altitude calibration is skewed," she said quietly. "It's off by nearly 12%. That alone could cause the engine's combustion cycle to falter." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. None of the engineers had mentioned calibration before. They'd been fixated on complex circuitry designs. Next, Riley examined the sensor array lining the engine's frame. Years of cleaning had dulled some lenses, but her real concern was misalignment. She adjusted a delicate sensor by fractions of a millimeter. "This sensor's angle is misaligned by 0.8 degrees, she explained. "It disrupts feedback loops critical to engine stability. Realigning it should improve response time." A few engineers exchanged uneasy glances. They had never considered such minor mechanical details could make such a difference. Finally, she opened the engine's cooling system casing. Dust and grime clogged the key vent, restricting airflow. "There's a blockage in the cooling system, likely causing overheating during operation. It's been overlooked because it's internal and not visible in system diagnostics." Dr. Marina Holt stepped closer, her arms folded but eyes sharp. For the first time, a slow nod of approval crossed her face. Riley's voice stayed steady and calm, her technical language precise but accessible. "It's not a failure of design or advanced circuitry," she said. "It's the small mechanical issues that have compounded. Fix these, and the engine should run." A silence heavier than before followed her words. The engineers had been chasing complex answers, ignoring the fundamentals. Riley's diagnosis was a quiet revolution. Marina finally spoke, her voice firm but respectful. "You see what many of us missed. It's often the simplest faults that cause the greatest problems." The tension in the room shifted. Riley wasn't just a janitor or a hopeful outsider anymore. She was a problem solver, a thinker who saw what others couldn't. And with every adjustment she made, Unit A17's long silence seemed closer to breaking. Riley took a deep breath and pressed the ignition button. A tense hush fell over the lab as the dormant Unit A17 shuddered. At first, only faint vibrations trembled through the floor, but then the engine roared to life, smooth, powerful, and steady. For the first time in 10 years, the lab was filled with the sound of a living machine. The engineers stood frozen, jaws slack, eyes wide. Their years of doubt, their mocking laughter, all dissolved into stunned silence. This was real. This was happening. Dr. Marina Holt stepped forward, her expression unreadable for a moment before breaking into a rare, approving smile. "Riley's diagnosis was 100% accurate," she said, voice carrying the weight of undeniable truth. "She didn't just fix the engine. She rewrote what we thought was impossible." The hum of the engine filled the space, a testament to quiet determination and overlooked insight. Riley stood tall, not with arrogance, but with the calm certainty of someone who had known all along what needed to be done. Around her, the engineers exchanged glances, the silence now charged with newfound respect, and perhaps a hint of disbelief. The impossible had been done, and Riley was the one who had done it. The moment Unit A17 roared to life, the fallout was immediate. HR representatives appeared in the lab within hours, their expressions carefully neutral, but eyes sharp with curiosity. They began taking notes, asking questions no one was prepared to answer. Executives who had previously ignored the janitor now demanded meetings, their interest piqued by the undeniable success. Meanwhile, the engineers who had so confidently mocked Riley found themselves scrambling to explain their long-standing failures. Whispered excuses circulated, blaming outdated equipment, budget cuts, even poor data, but none could hide the glaring truth. They had overlooked the simplest solutions. In the center of it all stood Dr. Marina Holt, her gaze piercing as she addressed the gathered team. "How did no one notice her talent?" she demanded, voice echoing in the stunned silence. "How could a mind this sharp be invisible to us all?" Her question hung in the air like a challenge, sparking uncomfortable glances and uneasy shuffles. The culture of arrogance and exclusion that had dominated Dynex was suddenly exposed as a weakness, a blind spot that had allowed talent to slip through the cracks. For Riley, the attention was overwhelming, but also vindicating. The silence she'd endured, the mockery and invisibility, suddenly made sense as part of a larger system that prized pedigree over potential. But the story was far from over. Executives now faced pressure to change policies, to reconsider who they valued and why. Engineers grappled with their own accountability, forced to confront years of assumptions and biases. And Riley? She was no longer just the girl who cleaned floors. She was a symbol of what Dynex had lost and what it could still become. The question wasn't just about a broken engine anymore. It was about the future of the company itself. In the days that followed, Riley's world shifted in ways she never imagined. Dr. Marina Holt personally approached her with an offer, a position as a trainee engineer under her guidance. "You've earned this," Marina said, eyes steady and sincere. "It's time your talent got the recognition it deserves." For the first time, Riley felt the weight of her father's legacy lifted with pride. His name was spoken with honor among the engineers who once ignored her, his brilliance finally acknowledged as the foundation of her own skills. Dynex ordered a plaque to commemorate Unit A17, the engine Riley had revived from a decade of silence and failure. It would hang proudly in the lab, a reminder of perseverance, insight, and quiet strength. The atmosphere among the engineers began to change. The mocking laughter was replaced with cautious respect. Some approached her with questions, others with tentative offers of collaboration. The invisible girl was now impossible to overlook. Yet Riley remained grounded. She knew this was just the beginning. The journey from janitor to engineer was more than a personal victory. It was a testament to what could happen when talent was given a chance, regardless of where it came from. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, a steady encouragement from beyond the years. And as Riley looked toward the future, she knew one thing for certain. She was ready to build something new, not just machines, but a better world. The ripple effect of Riley's breakthrough reached far beyond the lab. An internal audit uncovered deep-rooted issues within Dynex management. Blake, the arrogant lead engineer who had mocked and belittled Riley, was fired for negligence and fostering a toxic work environment. Several other engineers faced demotions or transfers, their reputations tarnished by years of complacency and closed-mindedness. The HR executive responsible for ignoring bias complaints was exposed and terminated, sending a clear message that the company would no longer tolerate discrimination or exclusion. Riley, now firmly established as an emerging talent, embraced a new role as a speaker and mentor. She began giving talks across the industry on the power of intuitive diagnostics, the kind of quiet observation and practical insight her father had taught her. Her story inspired others to look beyond credentials and titles, valuing curiosity and persistence above all. Her journey became a beacon for those overlooked, a reminder that brilliance often hides in unexpected places. Dynex was changing, slowly but surely. The culture of elitism was cracking, replaced by a growing respect for diversity of thought and experience. And at the center of it all stood Riley, proof that justice isn't just about punishment, but about opening doors and giving everyone a chance to shine. Years later, Riley stood at the forefront of aerospace innovation, no longer the overlooked janitor, but a respected engineer shaping the future. She had joined the leading firm, her expertise sought after, her voice valued, but she never forgot where she came from or who had taught her to see the world differently. In honor of her father, she launched a scholarship fund to support young inventors and self-taught engineers who, like her, learned by listening rather than textbooks. The fund was more than just money. It was a promise that talent would be nurtured wherever it was found. Every year, Riley personally mentored a new class of engineers, teaching them to listen to machines, not just through data and screens, but through intuition, patience, and respect. She passed down the lessons her father had engraved in her heart. One day, as she watched her students work, Riley shared her father's favorite saying, "Machines don't just break, they speak. You just have to learn how to hear." It was a full circle moment, a quiet tribute to the man who had sparked her journey. From a dusty garage to the cutting edge of technology, Riley's story was proof that true genius wasn't measured by degrees or titles. It was measured by the courage to listen and the strength to believe. And now she was helping others find their own voices, one machine, one mind at a time. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Real talent has no color, no status, only heart, skill, and the courage to prove them wrong. Let Riley's journey remind us all that greatness can come from the most unexpected places. Together, we can celebrate those who dare to listen, learn, and rise above. So join the movement, support the unheard voices, and help inspire the next generation of innovators, because everyone deserves a chance to shine.